Hey everybody, what's going on? Rob Cesternino back with you for Amazing Race here on a holiday weekend. And I hope you left room for dessert as we get ready to talk about the Amazing Race here for episode 10 of season 38 as we go to Italy after we get done with Manja. And here with us back our chief Amazing Race correspondent, I'm sure, who could build a Da Vinci bridge like nothing, Jessica Liese. Jess, how are you?
I may or may not have gotten out my kids' construction toys and tried to do this at home.
Yes. Okay. What do you do? Like with Lincoln Logs?
It looked like Lincoln Logs were the best bet, but I looked online. You can do it with popsicle sticks.
Yeah.
There's lots of different ways to accomplish it. But
Turkey drumsticks?
man, what kind of turkey are you eating at your Thanksgiving dinner that gives you enough drumsticks to build a bridge out of?
Not enough. Not enough. Okay.
Really?
And here with us, with flower power, it's Mike Bloom.
Well, listen, as Phil said, we like to live life in full bloom. So I'm happy to bring my cardamom onto the podcast after having dinner with my regular mom.
So we're recording this on Friday morning, Black Friday, Yellow and Black Friday here for the Amazing Race. And right before we came on, I went to go make my coffee and I'm getting ready. I'm running around and I set up the coffee and I came back to I needed the Amazing Race mistake chime because I had I put my cup underneath the coffee pot, made 1 cup of coffee, and I guess the coffee pot has been set to make a pot of coffee, and I came downstairs to a overflowing cup of coffee, and I just was like grabbing a million paper towels. So I can empathize with anybody who struggled on the Amazing Race this week.
Rob, read your clue. Read the side of your
clue.
coffee maker.
Don't leave the coffee maker while it's going on. And so, luckily, after about 3/4 of a roll of paper towels, I'm ready to talk about the Amazing Race.
Yeah, if only you had a cameraman behind you to zoom in on the button as you were pressing it.
Yeah, in weird slow motion as well. Like, Taylor clocked this on Chat BCC. Like, I thought it was my internet signal, but I guess everyone was kind of experiencing the A24S camera work going on in this week's Amazing Race episode.
Yeah. Look, they're getting better and better at what they do as far as the camera work goes. How did we feel about this leg as a whole in Italy? It was beautiful.
They finally got some good weather. That was nice.
Well,
it's been a little bit gray.
Define good.
Well, they had some color.
You said you wanted good weather, Adam.
Yeah, we'll get into that.
Yeah.
But I think it did make Italy look beautiful, even if it did not make Adam feel good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that I liked the tasks this leg. I think that especially, the flower roadblock might be one of the toughest tasks we've had in some time. I did like the fact that, again, we're getting towards the end of the race, that they are filling out the legs more with these miscellaneous route info tasks. I said the other ones outside of the flowers were kind of replacement level. I think as we're approaching the end of the season, my overall thoughts are sort of like what I ascribed to last week, which is like, if you're looking at the end result of each episode, it's not the most surprising thing in the world, with the exception of like the Tucker and Eric boot, maybe the Natalie and Stephanie boot. But the episodes themselves, at least, are comprised of some interesting things. It sucks that, obviously the biggest talking point from this episode will be a man's multi-time collapse due to his spikes in sugar levels. But, I think it did shine a really interesting light on Adam's kind of entire MO being there in the first place, which is sort of like the trials and tribulations that does happen with living with type 1 diabetes, especially a situation like this where the weather and physical limitations are quite adverse.
Well, I was very surprised to see Adam then do the second roadblock. I don't know if we are in danger where Joseph had done so many roadblocks throughout the race, but I was really surprised to see, and he did great, but I was surprised to see him like go right back out there for the next roadblock.
Well, if he was feeling fine at that point, I think he mentions he wants a shot at redemption after slowing them down so much on the first roadblock, which I guess, but it's also like a certain amount of that was not in his control. I think maybe this is just him reasserting control over what he's doing.
Yeah.
I mean, he did great.
I mean, we also know that, as has been mentioned before, Joseph is a lovably stubborn SOB. And so while it seems like the first roadblock was out of his control, just to the point where, like, he did not have any ability to push back against being taken to the sideline and being, waylaid for a couple of times. This was him sort of getting his mojo back and be like, okay, now that I have, my blood sugar's back at a stable level, now I could truly be the Adam that I want to be and stubbornly say that, no, I'm doing the roadblock this time, Joseph. You can't stop me.
Now, I noticed that we did not have a detour on this leg of the Amazing Race. How uncommon is that?
I mean, it happens a couple times a season.
Mm-hmm.
You never have 2 detours because obviously that's a lot of extra setup. But
Right.
I think if you're getting towards the end of the race, it's fine to do 2 roadblocks because it gives everybody something to do. And it's,
In theory.
it's one fewer task, in theory.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that usually I think the reason why it was brought in as an advent initially was this idea of like, okay, you think you had a moment off with not doing a roadblock, but now it's your turn to do so. But again, we've seen this sparingly in seasons past, that it's more so an excuse for sometimes teams to sort of load the roadblocks completely onto one person. I did look at the Amazing Race Wikipedia, and it looks like after this leg, Joseph and Adam are 6-6. So I guess they were 4-6 before this leg. I don't know if they still have the 6 roadblock limit, because Jack and Chelsea were eliminated at 5-7. So I don't know if it's necessarily like, oh, Joseph hit his roadblock limit, now Adam has to do them. But maybe it was also partially to even things up, just so they have a little bit more of a wiggle room going into the last 2 legs.
Does the lack of a detour prevent a lot of passing? Now, we did see where Kylan and Taylor were able to catch up after being on the second flight and get to 4th place, but does it sort of keep the status quo?
Well, as we saw, I was thinking about this a lot. I would have been so annoyed with this episode. I would have been so unpsyched to talk about it today if it had just been that Taylor and Kylan were on a flight an hour behind everybody else and they got eliminated this week.
Yeah.
Like, if they were gone, I'd just be
Mhm.
like, yeah, this was another episode. It was great, Rob. But I think having a really difficult roadblock is something of an equalizer as well.
Yeah.
Like, everybody was there for at least 45 minutes because when Taylor and Kylan arrived, everybody was still there.
Yeah.
And apart from the fact that Jag and Jazz are somehow operating on their own spectrum of time and space that
Yeah.
allows them to compress the amount of time in which they get stuff done.
Jess,
Everybody
I would say
else was
this challenge was I one of the times I feel like that we saw Jag or Jazz struggle the most this season.
Yeah, how did they do 9 checks before any of the other teams had gotten to their first check? That's what I want to know.
They're time lords. Like, it's gotta be that these guys are just able to jump through any wormhole at any point in time to arrive. Maybe that's why they're so good at navigation, because they don't actually navigate anywhere. They just hop through and they're already at the next space.
Well, is there something to that? Like, could that be some sort of like maybe when we do the exit interviews, we can ask them about this. But it seems like that they do have a strategy of that check early, check often. And we saw in, I don't know if it was last week or the week before, where they just happened to blindly like, okay, let's just check it with, we only knew 2, and they got all the olives right. Is that a valid strategy where they're just gonna like do more checks than anybody else?
Well, we've talked about this before in terms of like the dance tasks, because you never know what the criteria are. But we really don't end up because you don't know. It's always good to have it once. We've always said, go in and try it once so you know what they're looking for and you know what it's like, and then go back and refine. But I feel like Jag and Jazz are just like, we're gonna micro adjust every single time, just do it over and over and over until we hit upon the right thing, kind of brute force their way through it. I think there's something to it for sure.
I wonder if it's actually more indicative of where you are in the race, because Kylan does the exact opposite thing, right? Kylan's like, seems like a lot of people are checking and getting it wrong, so I want to make sure I'm thorough and only go through it once. I wonder if you're more in front, you have more of that leeway to be like, all right, let me sort of dip my toes in the water and figure out what exactly the criteria is here, figure out what maybe the judge will tell me when I'm getting wrong, maybe they won't. So, like, let me check early, let me check often, because I have that ability to do so. If you're playing catch up, then it's a little more, okay, if you're asking for checks, you're wasting time. So, like, let me try to make sure that I am thorough in how I do it the first time, so it's the only time.
And if there's only one judge, maybe there's a line when you are in like 5th, 6th place of like, okay, that they're checking. I'm typed that. Oh, I gotta check this person. I gotta check this person. I'll get to you. Where if you're in first place, like it's like, yeah, the judge is just standing there.
Yeah, she could just stand right by you and have you go through it a whole bunch of times. It's same thing like with the dance task. Since you have to perform like a minute-long routine, and you have to wait because there's only one set of judges.
Mm-hmm.
You might as well, like, if nobody else is getting checked, like, just keep getting checked until you get it right.
Yeah.
The question is, what do you think made this task so hard? Was it that the flowers were blending together, so it was tough to miscount it? Because something that Paige pointed out on Chat BCC, which is like, this is our requisite. Rob, you did take the drink every time we mentioned Chat BCC on this podcast. But Paige did say that according to Izzy, we see, she has difficulty pinning the flowers. It was getting so hot that the stems were softening on the flowers, which also made them very difficult to pin on. Do we think that was
it's getting too hot. That's why the stem is too soft, okay?
Exactly. Listen,
it was too hot.
It's the exact opposite of the George Costanza I was in the pool. But yeah, I could imagine that was definitely part of it.
The stem would be fine if it was a comfortable temperature. Who made it so hot in here?
So yeah, I think that probably might have not helped at all. But yeah, again, this was some of the most difficulty the teams have had with a task in a while. Again, as you mentioned, Jag and Jess, who are like team 1-2 punch with these tasks, took 12 tries, and that was the quickest anyone did this thing.
Where was Rubina and Christine for this one? They would have aced it. Could have been another 5-hole for Christine.
I feel like we need a term for it when the task shows up that's perfect for a team after that team has already been eliminated.
Well, what is it?
I don't know.
We need to crowdsource this. The posthumous 5-hole?
Yeah. So yeah, it seemed like that maybe it was counting the number of flowers. It's hard to tell where one flower ends and another one begins.
I would also say maybe a bit of a literal hot take on my part. Like, I get it's weird to say that we want these people to suffer. We want people to face the arduous nature of these tasks. But the Adam situation, if that was any indication, at least he should have been in the shade the entire time, maybe, if not all the teams.
Yeah. All right, well, let's talk about that because it was definitely the most dramatic moment of the episode where I cannot recall a time where we see like the Amazing Race doctors come out and have to deal with somebody like an episode of Survivor. And we see Adam fall to a knee and then require a medical intervention.
We've seen it a few times on Amazing Race, not in a few seasons, I think, where we've seen it. I think 2 seasons ago we had this happen but it's usually like in a place that's known to be very hot and humid.
Yeah.
Where you have teams that like aren't hydrating and they're running very hard and the heat gets to them. But this was something I think they had probably calibrated this task to weather that was 10 degrees cooler. And in that case, like, yeah, everybody should have been in the shade from the jump. They could have redone that, but I guess lighting and cameras and all of that makes it a little bit more difficult. I do want to talk about, I think it's part of Adam's issue here, and I would love to read more about this somewhere on Chat BCC or get their take on it after we interview them. But it seemed to me like they checked his sugar levels at a certain point, and his sugar levels were normal. So it was just the heat, but he corrects for the sugar levels anyway, overshoots it, and now he's hyperglycemic instead of hypoglycemic. And that took some time to even out. And that's been my understanding of people in that situation with type 1 diabetes is you don't usually know exactly how much you have to, like what point you have to hit until you're normal again. So you can sometimes overshoot it or undershoot it.
Yeah, I feel like our general sense of what happened was that, as you mentioned, Adam going into the roadblock seemed pretty copacetic, which is why he did it. And then the heat, the exhaustion started getting to him, which caused him to, I mean, it was pretty extreme. Again, this was a guy that allegedly a few legs ago just like pushed through things at a catastrophic level, but like not to the part where he was brought to his knees like he was
Yeah.
a couple of times here. And so they brought him to the side and his sugar levels were incredibly low. And so they give him electrolytes, right? They give him a Gatorade. The only issue is, those of us who,
The thirst quencher.
exactly. But the thing is that there's a reason why they usually pour them over people in the commercials and not drink them, is because they're chock full of sugar. And so his levels.
You think that would have been a more effective way? Like he had just won the Super Bowl, that we get Adam just pour like the Gatorade over his head. He would
disclaimer.
cool down.
Mike Bloom does not have a medical degree.
I mean, listen,
Or
there's
a Super Bowl trophy?
Not yet, at least. I don't know which am I more likely to achieve, an MD or a Lombardi trophy? Only time will tell. You can't spell Lombardi without MD.
Well, I feel like maybe it would be a ring. I think there's only one Lombardi trophy, where I don't know if maybe there would be some team that might bring you in to sort of like for morale.
Yeah, you could go on eBay and probably get a Super Bowl ring, right?
Like I see a lot that they have like Oz the Mentalist come in and talk to a football team. Like maybe like Mike Bloom could come in and like give them like a bunch of puns and like.
I mean, listen, Rob, I know that. Mentions. How would you feel if your currently flagging Jets would bring me in as sort of like a hope bringer, a mood lifter?
I would love it. Like, hey, we're gonna lighten the mood around here. It's Mike Bloom.
Here's a goofy guy with a bunch of costumes.
This is the Ted Lasso remake that I didn't know I needed.
Yeah. So the original question is: Mike Bloom more likely to get a Super Bowl or
a medical degree?
Medical degree? I don't know. I guess could they give it like some sort of like honorary medical degree?
Or an honorary Super Bowl ring?
I think it's more likely that there is some owner that is a fan of Mike Bloom's work and that perhaps brings him in for an honorary Super Bowl ring.
If an NFL owner is a fan of me, that's just yet another mark against their not so gleaming character.
It's not that crazy that there was a time when like Jeannie Buss of the Lakers was like, oh, she's a Big Brother fan, and you would see that she would have like Big Brother people like at the Lakers games. Like that would not be totally out of the realm of possibility.
That's actually, who knows who's flying American Airlines these days?
And actually, that's a very good point, because remember when Rex Ryan was on The Amazing Race? If Woody is still watching the show, give me a call, buddy. I'm like 20 minutes away.
It's equally possible that the dean of a medical school could be a big Amazing Race guy.
Yeah. We're so far off the track.
Respond to the comments what should be my next path in life? Should I go to a medical degree, or should I try to become part of a Super Bowl
perhaps dumping water over Adam's head could have been helpful.
Well, because the heat was more of the issue than the sugar, I think, at that moment, but it's hard to tell.
But still, an incredibly harrowing situation, because as Jess mentioned, we only really see the medics on screen when there is like an immediate cause for concern, right? We have heard to the moon and back about all these injuries that people have accrued, and it's just never shown when they get checked up on, even when it does end up being debilitating to their race. So like, you could tell something was very scary in this moment, and where even I wouldn't say everyone kind of like put down their competitive stances and we're like, okay, let's go help Adam. But it was more so that like clearly everyone was very concerned about Adam, because I think even though you are trying to race your best race, nobody was like, I don't want to win like this, like I don't want to survive this leg because the other guy was medically unable to stand up and do the roadblock.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's interesting that we had every single other racer looking into the camera and saying, I'm really concerned about him, but we have to keep doing our task because we aren't going to be helpful. And this felt to me like a very reactionary thing. Like they've all dealt with Big Brother internet. They know that somebody's going to come after them like, why weren't you over there helping? I'm like, because I'm not a medic. I'm just a contestant.
Yeah.
And they have medics doing that. And I thought it was very telling that they all made sure that everybody knew we are concerned about him. Yes.
Now, I guess the question is, could the non-participating partners of the other teams help out? Like, could Taylor of Chelsea have walked over to Adam and be like, okay, we're all gonna serve as like your on-site medical team here.
But
I
what
mean,
could
if
they have
they were
done? Like,
doctors,
yeah.
but yeah. Like, if he still had Hannah in the race, maybe.
Oh my god, that would have been perfect. Is this a posthumous 5-hole for Hannah Chana?
Like, you remember the Toughest Nails season where they medevaced Freight Train and they had a trauma nurse like in the
Mhm.
cast who was helping him.
Yeah.
What a weird sentence for anyone who hasn't had the pleasure of watching Toughest Nails when they medevaced
Yeah.
a UPS driver named Freight Train.
Yeah.
Look, man, if you didn't watch Tough as Nails, what's wrong with you? Seriously.
Okay, let's talk about Jack and Chelsea, who end up being the team who end up going out on this leg of the Amazing Race. And really, their story all season was like they were pretty good at most of the tasks for the most part. But really, that their story was just that they really struggled with the directions and would get like horribly lost. And it's I don't know what you could say. They weren't good at directions.
Yeah, I wonder, obviously, at this point, due to the holiday, none of us have spoken with Jack and Chelsea yet. We'll be
Yeah,
doing
Monday.
so on Monday. But I do wonder if there was sort of like an underlying commonality because, again, to your point, Rob, this was a repeated circumstance. I mean, something to note was that Jag and Jess do end up espousing probably one of the secrets to their success besides perfecting wormhole technology, which I think you would recommend for any future Amazing Race team, which is when you're getting directions, also write down the distance,
Mhm.
because then you'll be able to track via your speedometer as well. Like, okay, we've gone 950 kilometers. This is where the turn should be. Or even if like the street sign isn't there, you're in the general direction. So I don't know if Jack and Chelsea just like, because it seemed like they had everything, right? They wrote down directions, they had the map. Something that Chelsea did note on social media, which I'm intrigued to ask her about, is because we talked last week about Jack having this knee injury that was so debilitating to the point of where they were nearly going to pull themselves out of the race in the previous leg. She noted that because of that injury, he wasn't able to drive. And so I wonder if
Oh.
because she's typically the navigator, now they had to switch roles, and that might have also made it more difficult.
That's interesting. Tell me if this is, a very cold take. I don't like it that they get to ask people like, "Hey, can we look up the directions on your phone?" I feel like that in the old era of the Amazing Race, like you didn't have that, and it was better. What are we testing for? Of like, okay, like, all right, Google Maps says, okay, write, and I'm gonna write this down. And yes, that we see that for whatever reason, Jack and Chelsea, they have that, but they are not able to execute on it. But what are we testing for?
Well, Rob, we didn't start Amazing Race in the 1940s when there was no internet. We've
Started
always
in
had internet.
2001.
Yeah, in 2001, when you could go to any airport and they had an internet cafe where you could pay to go to the internet and look up all the stuff you needed and then print out the MapQuest directions.
Yes.
And that's what people did. They just didn't show it because it was boring. When they asked people for directions, it was like, they didn't all have it in their pocket, but they'd go to a hotel and they'd ask the concierge to Google it for them because Google was a thing. It was less of a thing, but it was a thing. And it just now happens that this is a little bit easier. And in the era when everybody's got this in their pocket, it would be disingenuous to say you can't just nobody can use their phones because the taxi drivers are using their phones. You know that any point where the racers are not propelling themselves, there's technology involved. It would be hard to prohibit that entirely, and it's always been a part of the race on some level.
That's the thing. I totally understand where you're coming from, Rob, because it does seem like, a few steps removed, even though Jess does bring us some good points from like, okay, we need to figure out how to get this place and let's draw a map for ourselves. It's a little bit of a simpler solution, but it is kind of impossible to police unless you really say from the jump, like, okay, you're only being given maps. You can only self-drive. Like, here's a compass.
Yeah.
Good luck, which is, again, a little tough to do in this day and age.
Okay.
Yeah, and if you get lost, you have to ask someone. And you can't police what they're going to do. You can't be like, okay, I need you to give me directions to this place, but you can't use your phone. If you go up to a bystander and ask them that, they're just gonna like flip you the double bird and tell you to keep on going.
I think we should have Amazing Race 40 take place entirely in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Do the Amazing Amish race. I think that's our solution.
Yeah,
No
but are they
technology.
self-driving or are they self-buggying at that point?
That's exactly it. All relies on the horsepower.
All right, we talked about the first task that they did with the flowers. What do we make of the second task of put together a giant castle puzzle and then go for a quick joust?
I mean, this is so Big Brother coded. Like, I was even thinking back to the Lance Rob. If
My
you recall,
brother coded.
Yeah, I mean, it was the very first veto of a Big Brother 24. That's the first of many competitions that Michael would
won.
win.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I feel like this felt, and something that Izzy talked about on Blue Sky last week, that I also talked about in one of the interviews I did with Eth Animail this week, is that apparently at least one of the people who worked on the team that designs the tasks on Amazing Race this season also helped design the tasks on Big Brother 25. Of course, that season that was certainly a talking point when it comes to competition and competition balance. So now that I can't unsee that, it makes a lot more sense to me that putting this tower puzzle together and doing this lancing feels like two Big Brother competitions smacked together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just like guys are going to push you on a fake horse, and then you're going to put the ring through it. And especially when, Jag did it so easily, I was like, what are we even doing here? What are we testing for? But it did seem like that then other people did struggle with it.
It was Amazing Race 24 coded, honestly. Like, I remember they'd be like, you guys are going to chariot race. And then you get there and they had these like RC car chariots.
Yes.
That's what it felt like.
Yeah. Should they in the future bring on Jag and Jess as production consultants and have them play test every single task to be like, all right, how can we make this harder? This was too easy for these guys.
But they're
the
good at
problem is,
everything.
you can't tell if something is hard just because Jag and Jazz did it well.
But that's testing the upper limit, right? It's like, okay, this is the best a team could possibly do at a task. If they're struggling, we know it's good.
You need Jag and Jazz, and then you need a team that's like, you need like normal people. You need to
Jack and
just pull people
Enzo.
off the street.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't going to say it.
I will say that I was astounded that I would imagine unprompted when Adam is having his big redemption moment and Joseph's standing on the side and everyone's chanting, "Let's go" in Italian. Like, they couldn't have known, right? That's been a big runner. That's been one of Andy Denhart's main complaints with this season, is that everyone and their mother or their father is saying "Let's go" on this season, now including the Italian locals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, we also had the teams make the Da Vinci Bridge, which nobody really struggled with that much. I was like, oh, this is pretty hard.
Little known Dan Brown book, The Da Vinci Bridge.
Yeah. So, yeah, there was not a lot of drama out of it, even though it was a 5-hole for Paige, who had watched YouTube videos about the Da Vinci Bridge.
Yeah, I come from a household where everybody else in the household falls down similar rabbit holes all the time. They like this channel called Primitive Technology, where this guy goes out into the woods and makes stuff out of stuff he finds in the woods. So this felt like something that anybody in my family would have aced as well. So very relatable on my part.
I wonder if that is sort of the substitute for, because something we talk about a lot in terms of successful Amazing Race teams are the fact that the ones that have a lot of life experience, Ricky and Cesar is a fantastic example of this. One big running bit was that Ricky had pretty much like a tangential experience to every single roadblock that he did. Is the next best thing just watching as many YouTube videos as possible to get a remedial understanding of so much in life?
Well, I mean, I was waiting for the Italian brain rot challenge here, and I didn't get one.
Yeah, what would it bellissima cappuccina, me.
Yeah, it would have been one of those memorize a poem challenges. We have to memorize a brain rot routine.
Crocodilo bombadillo, avi. Die.
Yeah, we didn't talk enough about the crowd of Italians. They had to know what they were doing, chanting "die, die, die."
Or maybe, maybe actually it doesn't mean let's go. They're like, oh, no, it means let's go. Yes, absolutely. We love your brother.
Yeah.
I was saying, let's go, Adam, let's go. I wasn't saying die, Adam, die.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I mean, it is objectively funny that this man who had his sugar levels vacillate so much back and forth, a mere hour later is being told to die by a whole surrounding of locals.
Yeah. I don't know if they would be so mean. So it's like cruel townspeople.
Was this part of the task? Like
Heckling,
you have
yeah.
people heckling you while you're trying to do the task?
Okay. Maybe we'll find out from the medieval villagers who were there to wanting to see the worst things happen to people. All right, let's talk about our teams. In first place, winners of $7,500 each. How do they? Is this typical? That I feel like that usually it's like, oh, you win $2,500 each. Now, are we just getting to the end game and now we start doling out more cash?
It incrementally goes up. Amazing Race Canada this year was giving away ridiculous amounts of money on top of the prize. Yeah, in the early legs, if you win a leg, you can get like 2,500, but it does go up over time. I think the most I've seen teams get, I think they've gotten like 15,000 each at some point.
Damn.
Yeah.
I mean, it is interesting. This is theoretically 1% of what Jag already won on Big Brother 25.
Mm-hmm. Listen.
Yeah, but still, money's money.
They're gonna look. They're like, get that paper, Jag and Jazz.
I was gonna say, I don't know what the equivalent of how many TikTok lives he would have to do to make this money again. But it's good. It's good eating because these guys completed the hand, right? They got the thumb, as the late Jim would say. 5 first place finishes, and if I were a betting man, I would say there's a very good chance they're going to finish first in the remaining legs as well. Just because, again, even in a task that took them 12 tries to do, they were still unstoppable. They still got out of there in first place. I mean, when you have someone actively maligning the fact of no matter what we do, these guys are always just one literal step ahead of us. I don't know. I know I feel like a broken record coming back here time and time again, being like, these guys are absolutely goddamn ridiculous at the race. But this week continues to prove the point.
Well, I think that back in the first episode, they called themselves the Turbinators. And that was really a very apt team name description for them. I wish that had stuck more because they've just basically, like the Terminator, they just keep coming.
Yeah, well, they're manipulating the laws of space-time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's very impressive. Honestly, I want to know how they do it.
It's such a great indicator of the sliding scale of all things, where you have Jag and Jess being like, yeah, we were making mistakes at the beginning, but now our communication issues are better. And I'm like, are the communication issues in the chariot with us right now? We have not seen really any friction either between them or with any of the tasks outside of the race. There have been very little issues they've seemed to face both internally and externally. But I guess it's everything being relative, right? They have not nearly struggled as much as any of the other teams. So their own issues are much more minuscule compared to the other issues that teams are having.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They were also giving navigational support to Joseph and Adam, as we found out last week that Jag and Joseph are best friends, and so that they are continuing to help them. It would have been interesting to see if Izzy and Paige were coming out second, and how they would have tried to lose them. They're we wouldn't just do this. We did this for Joseph and Adam, but we wouldn't do this for anybody.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Maybe they have different best friends this week. I doubt it would be Izzy and Paige, but still.
I am stemming off of what we talked about last week. I am a little miffed that we didn't get any sort of follow up on the Jazz and Jag, Izzy and Paige dynamic, because we had them quote unquote getting their revenge, right, by voting Jag and Jazz last week. But we didn't get any reaction from Izzy and Paige about that. We didn't get any sort of conversation, assumingly, between these two teams, considering they were on the same flight to Italy. Was it really just water under the bridge after that happened?
The only bad blood we heard about from the U-turn was that Taylor said that the teams that U-turn them are dead to them. Going full Abby Maria. Die. And I'm like, wait, I'm trying to remember. Who U-turned Kyle and Taylor? I know that Jag and Jazz did. Well, and then who else did?
So let's see. It looks like Looking at the votes right now. So Tucker and Eric, Jack and
Yeah,
Chelsea
they're
voted for
gone.
them. Jag and Jazz voted for them. And then Joseph and Adam also
Mhm.
voted for them in the tiebreaker.
Okay. All right. Well, Jazz and Jag continuing up the amazing pace, and then with their number one rivals in Tucker and Eric out of the race, that they seem to have smooth sailing for Jag and Jazz. But here come Izzy and Paige, who are heating up at the right time.
You know, they've got the underdog thing going for them,
Hmm.
and you have to love that. And again, this is another team that doesn't have the communication issues. Like, they don't argue with each other. They're very solid, they're very supportive, and they're very aware of what each other's strengths and weaknesses are. And I love this for them. I love that they're up here in front.
Yeah.
I am very excited to see them potentially go to the finals. This is a good place for them. And they're also, I feel like you had one kind of group of very strong racers dominating a lot of this season, and to have them kind of work their way up from the bottom is great.
Yeah, I really enjoyed a lot of what Izzy and Paige brought to this episode. I'm not just talking about the Bushy comment that, Izzy, you knew what you were doing there. You
Hmm.
may have been
Oh,
separate
yeah.
from Peace Stroke, but you knew what you were doing. But there was a moment where Izzy was very vocally and verbally frustrated at Jag and Jazz just blazing through the roadblock. And she vocalizes that I think a lot of it does sort of stem from the Big Brother 25 of it all. That, Jag ends up getting one over her there, and she feels like when she came back from Big Brother, she didn't necessarily feel like she had the capacity to win really anything. I think it's an understandable crisis that a lot of people who don't end up winning on reality TV face. And I imagine a lot of that was sort of re-triggered getting to see the man who won her season continue to win here. But she does say, like, I feel like my best self alongside Paige. So if anyone's motivating me right now, it is her. And how could you not when you have some darling chestnuts from Paige's life, like her mother and her partner run a Renaissance fair?
Yeah.
And again, this is also very Ricky and Cesar coded, where
Yeah.
one of them has tangential life experience that helps them in every
Mhm.
task.
Yeah. But Mike, you brought up an interesting point about Izzy and Paige, and Izzy feeling like, okay, well, I don't know if I feel like a winner, and you gotta shake that. You gotta see the win to be able to do it.
It's true. I mean, it doesn't help that up until Jack and Chelsea's elimination, all of the Big Brother winners that were on this season had made the final five.
Mhm.
That has to be tough too. Yes, it is a little bit of apples and oranges between Big Brother and The Amazing Race, but to be surrounded by people who did do well, I would imagine there was probably a little bit of imposter syndrome. I think they are confident in their skills, especially when they are relying on each other. But I don't know. I certainly would be in that position if I'm like, I placed like 13th in my original season. I'm here with the most 3 recent winners. What am I doing?
Mhm. All right. Well, we mentioned Paige was great at the Da Vinci Bridge. Seemed to have no problems putting the tower together. She spends a lot of time up on ladders doing lighting design.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if like that's really a 5 hole. It's like I spend a lot of time on a ladder. The ladder didn't seem like the most difficult thing. Granted, it was a very easy task overall, but I wouldn't say the ladder was the hardest part of
Yeah.
it.
And Phil complimented and said, "Hey, look at you. This is your best finish yet."
That feels a little bit like giving someone the most improved award.
Mm-hmm.
It feels very condescending to me.
Little
I expect
bushy.
better from Phil. Yeah, a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about Joseph and Adam. And here they are now in third place after it looked like that maybe it was going to be more of a struggle, but here they are. First off, Joseph, what a great brother
Oh.
he is. Although he did then call Adam a troll and locked him in the bridge.
I mean, it's his brother at the end of the day, like
Mhm.
he still is going to tease him. But yeah, I thought this was, I mean, this was such a spectacular leg for them, not obviously in terms of placement, but like what they were able to push through. And that moment of as soon as they clocked in third, like Joseph immediately turning to him and saying, "You did that. That was all you." Like, yes, maybe on paper it is a little odd to say, "Hey, Adam, you nearly collapsed a couple times. You can do this roadblock." But he knew in that moment that like his brother needed this moral victory, and he was able to get it. And so it's just continuing to explore an incredibly sweet and caring dynamic. I look forward to every time these guys check in on the mat, just because like you are going to get big feelings out of these guys. And again, it was, I would not necessarily want to see Adam in this situation, but the fact that they were able to get through it, be able to pivot on the fly, and not be anywhere near the bottom as a result, is pretty darn good. Though I will say, we'll talk about the actual finish times. It does seem like Joseph and Adam were closer to the Kylan and Taylor and Jack and Chelsea side of things than they were the top two teams. That's a little tough going into the final four, right? When any mistake, any gong sound can send you home. But what's not to love about these guys?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry so much about momentum at this point, because we got to know they're flying back to the States and they're going to be equalized at that point. I don't think we're going to end up with people on two different flights going back.
So just looking ahead, so we're going to have one more leg in Italy, and then the finale will be in America? Or
we're going to France next week for the
Okay.
penultimate leg.
I'm sorry. Yes, I meant to say Europe. So we're going to go to spend the next episode in France, and then the finale will head to the U.S.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. All right. Anything else about Joseph and Adam going into the final four?
I mean, I like how caught off guard Phil always is by their energy.
Yes.
That's one of my favorite running
He's
gags.
either the loudest team ever.
And the most emotional team ever.
Which there have been a lot of teams. That's saying a lot.
Yeah.
I do wonder if the Joseph, Adam, Jag, and Jess alliance is going to continue to be a thing going into these last couple of legs. There was a certain point, even with the most ironclad alliances, where like the guys kind of gets dropped, and it's like, and you drop the guys literally. It's like, okay, we're gonna work by ourselves. Let's race our own race. I mean, do you think that if it got to a point next week where like Joseph and Adam or Jag and Jess would need some help, that the other would assist them? Or do you think they've already gotten to the point where they're like, hey, it was nice to work with you guys, but we're racing for ourselves at this point?
I think they'd help. I think that Jag and Jess are not concerned of like, listen, we'll help you out. We're still going to win.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, Mike, in terms of how Jag played Big Brother, of like, hey, we're like, I've got my number one ally, and I'm gonna like work with them all the way to the end. So I don't think he's cutthroat like that, even though he did mention in the Big Brother 25 finale about how he got like he had so much blood on his hands. I think that he is gonna like help his friends.
Are you saying this is the new Mafia?
The Mafia. Joseph and Adam, how did your life change? I would say for the better when you joined the Mafia with Jag and Jess. Okay. All right, Kylan and Taylor, here they are. Fourth place. They overcome being on the second flight. Mike, I know that there was Kylan told a story about what happened at the travel agent on Chat BCC.
Yes, so apparently Kylan and Taylor, when they got to the travel agent, allegedly, maybe this is also to save some face for you turning them, Joseph jokingly told the travel agent, hey, tell them that there's no seats left on the flight and they have to take another one, only for fiction to become reality when they were told that there were actually no seats on the flight. And what I will say is, like, yes, Kylan and Taylor finished in fourth, and allegedly, according to Chelsea, it was like only by less than a minute that they checked in ahead of them. But I think this is almost like what we talked about with the first couple legs of this season, where like they were an hour behind. And so I do give them kudos for doing well enough, or Jack and Chelsea not doing well enough to make up a lot of that ground. Like, it's not like saying, oh, these are our bottom G.Honest's. They scraped by again. It's less so that like they're doing bad, just less bad than one team. I do think they made up a lot of time, given the fact that they started the leg in such a tough place.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to give it to Kylan on this one. This was a perfect example of choosing the right person for the right roadblock. And it brings back Kim and Penn vibes of like putting Penn on the thing that requires hyper focus and attention to detail. Like we stand a neurodivergent legend doing a detail task. It made me really happy to see how quickly he turned that out. It was really fun.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing about Penn and his ADHD superpowers. And so Kylan, he aces that. I also noticed that when Taylor was doing the puzzle, Kylan broke out a set of binoculars. And I'm like, is this standard issue for the racers, or did Kylan pack binoculars to bring?
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if this man's a birder, right? He has a lot of random interests. He said allegedly that A, she was far away enough, and B, he is nearsighted, so he might have maybe these are prescription binoculars that he would need to use. I feel like they're good tools to have on the race as long as they're fairly portable, right? Like in case you have to see things far away.
Yeah, I've never seen that. If you're like looking for like the clue box far away, like I've never seen a racers pack binoculars.
I've never seen them have their own. I've seen like whenever you have to spot something far away, they usually give them to you. But
Yeah.
this was a new one on me. But I could see that being something. This would be something that I would want to ask them about.
Well, I
Yeah.
think
Because I know they were very particular about what they did and didn't pack.
I wonder if instead of binoculars, if you're really trying to save space, should you bring a telescope?
Well, you are in Italy. You could move, like for Galileo.
One of those collapsible spy glasses.
Exactly.
Yeah. Mike, what's the more useful thing to pack for the Amazing Race? Binoculars or Banaka?
Oh, that's very true. I
That
really,
could be a great detour.
I suppose so.
No,
I,
In binoculars, the teams will have to spot something very far away. In Banaka, they will have to kiss a local.
yeah, I mean, I think for many reasons, that could be the last season of The Amazing Race. I mean, you don't want them to ask for directions from people, Rob, and you're having them smooch them.
How about, all right, we're workshopping. Teams will have to consume mass quantities of garlic and then whisper a secret to a local.
Now,
And
could
get
the
them
secret
to
be?
then repeat it back.
I was saying, could the secret be true or not?
Like a telephone game, but you've eaten a bunch of garlic right before.
This we're gonna need to workshop this, Rob.
I don't know. I'm on board so far. Anything
right.
that allows you to divulge your dirty secrets to random passersby gets an A-OK for me.
Okay. All right. So Kylan and Taylor, they make up the time and they end up in 4th place. And, back-to-back weeks where they narrowly avoid elimination. But they're hanging in there.
They're tenacious.
Okay. All right. And then Jack and Chelsea.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. I think it makes sense given the fact that we have been given this storyline time and time again. And we talked about this a couple weeks ago, right? That it's like, hey, they've been able to get by because of their performance in the task, but it'll get to a point where there's not enough teams left for them to be able to sort of like have that wiggle room from the lack of navigational skills. I'm sure we'll find out a bit more about what is the root of those issues, whether or not it comes from that injury or something else. I mean, Chelsea says at the end of the episode that The Amazing Race is the greatest experience she had in her life. Julie Chen Moonves is like, F my drag, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't think anybody I feel like Big Brother isn't fun. Like there's a reason whenever you ask people,
Going on
what
the Amazing
show would
Race
you
is fun.
Yeah. Amazing Race is fun and good. But I feel like a lot of people apply for the Amazing Race first and then get like put out to the shows that deliberately make you miserable. I
Yeah.
don't think Amazing Race ever deliberately makes you miserable.
Well, Big Brother and The Amazing Race are like completely opposite experiences where that Big Brother is like you stay in one space for an extremely long period of time and then have to just like fight through the boredom and lack of stimulation. Whereas The Amazing Race, you go a bunch of different places in a very short amount of time and have to like sort of like try to keep some sense of focus as like everything around you is constantly changing.
Well, Rob, I didn't realize you had the deck for the reason they pitched this season in the first place.
Yes. And then the fans, that they love the one thing, and maybe they'll watch this.
Yeah, we take the people that they liked and maybe have them do something fun instead. Oh boy, Big Brother Internet's gonna come after me today.
It's fine. They get it.
For what it's worth, I feel like you think on paper, you look at these results and you haven't watched the episode, you're like, yeah, this makes sense. But they were hanging in there. It really did seem like it was neck and neck between these two and Kylan and Taylor through those latter two tasks. And according to Chelsea, allegedly, they only lost by 45 seconds at the mat. So like it was even closer than we thought it would be. I will still say that I feel like we have gone on less of a personal journey with this team out of the final five. Maybe it's just because of like their storyline was less so about their relationship. Maybe it's because Jack is more of a low key character, though I did love him at the roadblock being like trying to call his shot, being like, all right, this is it, baby. Here comes the comeback. We're done right now. It's dusted. Sound the buzzer. Ring that bell. And the judge is like, nope, too many flowers. Keep going.
Good for Jack on that. He did the flower dress challenge. I thought that that maybe he would be like, I'm not doing that. But yeah, he jumped right in.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons, like this is the team that, you're listing off like what teams are left. That was the team I kept forgetting was still there.
Mm-hmm.
And they seem great. Like they're fine. They're not like, it's not like they don't pop on screen. It's not like they weren't entertaining. I think the problem is you just had this like demographic silo here where everybody else, it's like having one adult and a bunch of kids. And I think the fact that, Jack was a different generation, it made it harder. Like there was not as much inter team drama as there was between like all the other teams that have history and that have like their partner is the same age as they are. And it's like everybody's kind of in their own like 20 and 30 something drama. And then over here we have a father and daughter.
Yeah, no, they did have the most drama interpersonally, I would say, when it came to like that very tense moment, the silent at the bus stop.
Drama had to go somewhere. So it just like went in and saw their stories were about them. Milk. They weren't about, they weren't them versus other people,
Yeah. All right.
So they were on their own little island for most of the race, I think.
All right, we're heading into the final four. Anything else to say about this final five leg of the Amazing Race?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Yeah. I will tease a word of caution maybe for next week.
What?
Because ordinarily, I think that we would expect our final elimination to happen and set up the final three for 2 weeks from now, which is the finale. For what it's worth, last season, they did something a little different where they actually ended on a cliffhanger in the penultimate episode. It was at the final task. 2 teams had already checked in. It was almost like a week-long commercial break, right? Where it was like, oh my God, this team broke a tile. What's going to happen to them? And then spoiler alert, they came back a week later and said, oh, they're fine. They're going to check in 3rd place. So there's a non-zero chance we might get that next week. I'm not going to say that's confirmed, but I would also say maybe like don't 100% expect an elimination go. I guess in case it is though, who do we think would be the most likely to go in 4th place? I know it's tough to do that guesswork in the Amazing Race, but I guess on a neutral field in France, who would you bet would be shut out of the final 3?
I think it's got to be. It's not Jag and Jazz. I'll tell you that for free. But that would be amazing though. Like, what if it's Jag and Jazz? That would be amazing. Be amazing television.
It would be a big surprise, maybe worthy of a week-long cliffhanger.
Sure. Like if they're gonna pull this Walking Dead season 6 finale stuff on us.
Yeah,
it better be good.
Well, I think if you were gonna like break down the other 3 teams, I think that Izzy and Paige are the team that's like getting hot at the right time, and we see that happen on the Amazing Race, where one team sort of like has kind of figured it out, and if they're able to keep that momentum, like they have a good shot to be able to keep it going and maybe overtake Jag and Jazz at the right time. Taylor and Kylan, I think are sometimes a little task dependent of sometimes that they have things that they really ace. And so they're probably the team that has like the most variance in terms of like sometimes they're just like they're flying and other times they might have a little bit of a struggle. I think that Joseph and Adam might be a team where when they are apart from Jag and Jazz, we have seen where there are a number of things that could befall them where they're not the greatest team with directions. We've seen them also struggle at certain tasks. I remember the circus where we were at like 128 attempts in juggling. We've seen where Adam's health issues can present a problem. They were also like the last team to check in earlier in the race and saved by a non-elimination leg. And I think that when Jag and Jazz aren't helping them with directions, we've seen them also struggle with some navigation.
I think that's a good breakdown, Rob.
Mhm.
Yeah, I would say that it would probably be Joseph and Adam for me because of what you mentioned, that I think they can have strong days, but I do feel like their flaws have been more prominent than the
Mhm.
other 3 teams, as opposed to, like, if Jag and Jess and Izzy and Paige and Kylan and Taylor all have at least a pretty good day, that means they're going to be relatively successful. Now, for what it's worth, we've seen random teams get first place in these penultimate legs before, so maybe Joseph and Adam have a really good day. But again, neutral field, I would probably say maybe that's another reason why if they were to do a cliffhanger, right? It's like, hey, here's a fan favorite team. Let's make sure that we have the, people watching for them in the finale only to have their dreams crushed in the first 5 minutes.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll talk about it when it happens next week on The Amazing Race. A couple of other things to tell you about here. We're recording here on Yellow and Black Friday, and we dropped a bunch of new merch in the. This is one of those items that you can check out. Go to robhaswebsite.com/merch or shop, I think is also going to work. And you can check out all of the new things that we added there. And also, if you're a patron of Robin's Podcast, we sent you a special 25% off discount code for everything in the store for Black Friday. And also for the holiday season, the gift on everybody's list, the tribe and I have spoken. We set it up where if you want to give this as a gift, it's available only for pre-orders, but the book is coming out in May of 2026 that we will send you a postcard that you can give to your loved one to be able to tell them that they're getting the gift of lore and legacy of Survivor at the robhasabook.com. All right. Any exciting shopping going on for you all? Only for movie tickets?
Only for movie tickets. This is my Black Friday is the traditional movie day where we catch up on all the holiday movies and we just go and spend the whole day at the theater. There's only 2 today, but one of them is the Wicked sequel, so that's going to be fairly long. I think we've done this every year for the past 6 years.
Wow, that's
So
amazing. That's a really cool tradition, I will say. Just because, yes, it's not exactly steering away from the themes of rampant capitalism that exists on Black Friday, but like it's a fun way to make the most of a day that everyone kind of has off. I feel like personally, I would say not to go too tangential, but we did have an entire segment of this podcast about whether or not I'm more likely to get a medical degree or a Super Bowl ring. I do feel like the role of Cyber Monday has kind of obfuscated the appeal and allure of Black Friday. I think that and a lot of like in-person stuff being more easily available online. So yes, I'll maybe do some stuff today, but I feel like you have the appeal of like the extended weekend into Monday that has a much longer tail, a much more sustained period of like, I don't need to be online 24/7 to shop. I can be on it for pleasure.
You're online 24/7, Mike. Let's
I'm
not get it twisted.
terminally online, but my credit card is not.
Okay.
I'm going to try to do more brick and mortar shopping this year.
Okay.
We always, every time we go down to the Regal Union Square to see movies, we stop at the Strand and we stop at Forbidden Planet and we support the non-chain stores.
Oh my God, Jess, can I be a lease for Black Friday 2026? This sounds like an incredible day.
Mike, I'll buy you a pack of Pokemon cards if you manage to stay quiet and stay in your seat for the whole movie.
Wow.
Oh, that's more valuable than $7,500 to me at this point. That's my Expedia point.
Yeah. All right.
I don't know how many Expedia points a pack of Pokemon cards is. Also, I want to just shout out, I'm really hoping it's not Joseph and Adam next week because that's who George picked at the beginning of the season. So we'd love for him to be right so he'll be interested in Amazing Race again.
Yeah. Whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes.
Mike, what's coming up for you?
Well, as I mentioned before, we'll have our respective interviews with Jack and Chelsea on Monday. I'm very intrigued to get their perspective on things because, again, for a team that I think got a little bit of a quieter edit compared to the rest of the Final Five, I'm sure they have a lot to talk about in terms of their side of things, their own dynamic. We'll also be talking with the person most recently booted from Survivor, which, dare I say, maybe the best episode of the season this past week. So it was a very fun night on Wednesday night. We'll also have this weekend a crossover between the RHAP, B&B, and Survivor Global, a partnership
Ooh.
made in heaven, much like any good Amazing Race team. So we'll bring Shannon on for some fun games and strategy. And the big thing is I've been doing these miscellaneous interviews from people in the Big Brother community about this season of The Amazing Race. As I mentioned before, I had Ethanimail, who is a very prolific Big Brother YouTuber. I would really recommend you check his stuff out, especially if you're a Big Brother fan. He was really fun to talk with, especially because he has like a grown a la a flower his own relationship with the Turners off screen. So he talks a bit about like his own experience, watching it through that perspective, as well as his thoughts on the U-turn vote. And then, we did sadly bid adieu to our final Big Brother 26 alumni team in Jack and Chelsea. And so it's proper timing to have a Big Brother 26 cast member on to talk about it all. So I will have Quinn Martin on this weekend to give his thoughts about this season, about his fellow cast members and how they performed, and his overall thoughts as we look ahead to the final couple of weeks. And then everything else going on, you can check me out at a Mike Bloom type.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us for The Amazing Race here Thanksgiving weekend. We'll be back to talk about it. The final 4 next week. Take care. Have a good one. Bye.
This is RHAP. We know reality TV.